Hi, I'm Trisha Morris from Club Scrap, and welcome to the Flexi Planner in a Slipcase project workshop. I'm going to be filming two versions of this workshop. The first version will have the entire project from start to finish, and the second version will just pick up where we left off with the trimming and preparation of all the papers, just so that you can see how this cool project comes together. Now, what's inside this box? Well, it's actually the planner, and I call it a Flexi planner because it's very flexible, and it does have an elastic closure, and when you open it up, you got all kinds of fun things to work with, like graph paper, line paper, a to-do list, and a calendar. So all the things that I use to keep my life organized. It's almost gift giving season, and I think this would also make a wonderful gift. Well, let's get started. I've divided the instructions into several phases. Phase one will be the trimming phase, in which we will cut every single piece of paper we need and place it in our accordion pocket file if you happen to have one of these. If you don't, I recommend that you have a larger horizontal workspace, like maybe a big kitchen table or a craft bench, and then just maintain 4 separate piles. If you'd like to label them A, B, C, and D, that might be really helpful. Once we have all the papers trimmed and scored, then we'll assemble everything from pocket A into the planner cover. Everything from pocket B will be the inside the planner, and everything from pocket C will be the box and slip cover. And then the final pocket I'm calling creative expression. So those are the things that you'll be able to use to decorate your project. So this is a really well-planned, obviously, project, perfect for the Flexi Planner name that I've given it. So the first thing we're going to do is just sort out the papers that we've included in the actual Flexi Planner full kit. Now, the difference between the kit and the component kit is simply that we have chosen this beautiful farm stand collection to be the kit that we use just for demonstration purposes, but you can substitute this project with any Club Scrap page kit. I'll be using the 12 sheets of paper. It's just that you'll have to decide what paper goes where, so you'll have to use your own imagination there. Okay, so to sort the papers, let's just go ahead and put all of this stuff in the appropriate order. We're going to begin by finding 2 sheets of the red plain from this kit. So 2 of them, 1, 2. Then we're going to find 1 light green. That'll be for step 2. Followed by yet another light green, 2 border prints. So if you're using another page kit, just substitute a different print in this case. I've chosen the border prints, and then 1 frame print we'll trim next. Notice I'm putting those prints face down on the trimmer because eventually we'll flip the whole stack over and then tackle it from top to bottom. Next, I'm going to grab 2 of the orange plains. That's going to become the lid. 2 dark green. And finally, 1 of this final frame print. And then you'll notice that you also have all of these other printed elements. These are cut-aparts and die cuts. And these you can retrofit onto your planner with ease. You just, again, have to use your imagination. And as a little tip, on these cut-aparts, there is a little hash mark on the corner. And before you trim the individual elements, I recommend that you just trim around the perimeter of the entire piece, using those hash marks as a guide, so that you're starting with a 12 by 12, and then you can just visually see how to cut these into individual elements. So those are the cut aparts, those are the decorative material, and we're just going to cover the construction and assembly of this cool project. So now flip over all of the sorted papers back to the red. So the red is on top, or whatever you started with is on the top. And again, I'm going to be going with step 1 on page 1, the trimming phase. All right, so I'm going to take this first piece and check the grain direction. To do that, hold the paper by an edge and watch it wiggle. Make sure you get the most flexible direction going left to right. If I hold the paper by this edge, it's very stiff. This edge, it wiggles, so just make sure you have the wiggly side. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the second red. We're going to trim these at the same time, the same way. Okay, so we'll put both of these in, and if you don't feel comfortable doing 2 at a time, or maybe you don't have a nice trimmer like this, you'll have to work 1 at a time. So I'm going to trim this at 7 1/4, and then rotate and cut at 8 3/4. And these 2 pieces will need to be scored. So I'm going to create a separate pile that we'll tackle that when we do all of our scoring. And then now I'm going to take this rectangular piece, and place this in pocket D. Now all of the D, remember, the D pocket items are for decorative purposes. Okay, now this next two pieces, I'm gonna take both of them at the same time and cut horizontally at 6. And we can place both of these in pocket B. That's all there is to it. Now take this next sheet of the light green. The grain direction for this one doesn't matter. And I'll trim at 11 3/4 and 6 1/4. And then rotate and cut at 10 and 5. Okay, so both of these pieces go in pocket or pile B. And then you should have this skinnier little piece here that can go in D. And then finally the larger piece, we're gonna trim it horizontally at 8 3/4. The large piece goes in pocket A, and the smaller one, D, along with this narrow strip. You can either throw this away or save it, and just in case you decide you want to use it. Sometimes I find a cool home for those little strips. I'm moving on to step 3 now, page 2 of the instructions. I'm going to take this paper B here and check my grain direction so that this time I want it, again, dipping easily from top to bottom. And the reason for that is I'm going to be folding this eventually, and I want it to fold easily. Then I'm going to do the same thing with this piece here. Make sure I'm putting in so it dips with the grain. And we'll trim at 8 1/2. Then I'm going to rotate and cut at 11. Set these 2 large pieces aside to be scored, and the remaining pieces can go in pocket D. Okay, now I'm going to take another, and I want it dipping top to bottom. And same for this one, this next print. 1 frame print, 1 border print. We'll trim again at 8 1/2. And rotate and trim at 11. Both of these get scored. And this one, these 2 can go in pocket D for decorating things. And then these 2 little strips can also go in pocket D. Okay, now we're moving on. We did 4 pieces just like that. Now we're moving on to step 4. And this time I want the paper to dip easily left to right. And I'm going to repeat that for the second sheet of orange and trim this at the same exact time. So our cut will be at 8 1/4. Gather both of those larger pieces and set them aside to be scored, and then take the next strip and trim horizontally at 8 1/4. This goes in pocket A, both of them, and then these other rectangles or squares, it's a square, they're both going to go in D. Take 1 sheet of the dark green and we'll let it dip left to right. Trim at 7 1/2. Set this aside to be scored. And this piece will trim horizontally at 8 3/4. Set this aside to be scored, and then the smaller piece goes in pocket D. Again, I'm going to take the next piece, make sure my grain dips easily left to right, and cut it 7 1/2. Set this aside, and then this can go in pocket D. Moving right along to the final large piece. This is step 7. We're just going to go ahead and trim this at 10 1/2 and 9, and then rotate and cut at 11 and 5 1/2. Okay, so these 2 pieces will be used in pocket C. And this sort of short skinny one, D. Now take one of these strips, we'll trim horizontally at 11 and 5 1/2. Both of these strips are the same width. And then these will go in C. And this other strip will trim at 9. And that will also go in pocket C. Okay, these little pieces can either be disposed of or scraps in pocket D with everything else. Now, I want you to switch, as long as we have the trimmer out, I'm going to have you take the manila envelopes that came in either your components kit or in your craft along kit, the complete kit with the farmer's market, and go ahead and just close the flaps. These are a nice metal clasp envelope, and kind of make that crease there. Then I want you to take this envelope and put it horizontally into your trimmer so that the bottom of the envelope is on the right next to the blade. And all I do is just kind of feel it. I push to the right a little bit to see that the seam is past the blade, and then slice it off. So now I created a pocket on this side. Then you can take the envelope and fold it in half and crease it. And if you want, you can use a bone folder to kind of make a nice crease there. And we'll repeat that for the second envelope. So again, the bottom seam goes to the right. Just feel for it to go past the edge of your blade. Slice and fold in half. Make sure, again, the clasp is on the outside. It doesn't matter so much, but just for consistency. Both of these are used in pocket B. That's it for the trimming for now. We're going to get out our score pal, so I'm just going to carefully remove my accordion pocket file from the back of the trimmer. I have some hook and loop tape holding that in place. And now we have this big stack of all this stuff. I'm going to help you make sense of this. So I'm working in the order everything landed and was placed in that pile. So we're going to begin with this 7.5 by 12 inch piece. And we'll score vertically at 1.5 and 6.5. Now rotate it so it's horizontal, and we'll score at 1.5 and 10.5. Then I'm going to actually find another piece that's exactly that same size, and we're going to repeat the same thing. As long as we're doing one, let's do the other. So again, this is going to be vertically at 1.5 and 6.5, and then horizontally at 1.5 and 10.5. Both of these pieces will be used in pocket C, and because they were already 12 inches wide, I'm just going to place them in the pocket at an angle. Now this next piece is kind of weird, so you have to bear with me. I'm going to just try to do my best here. I want to place my first score line on the piece with it positioned vertically at 1 7/8. So if you're not used to measuring eighths, it's pretty easy on the score pal because there's a little channel on every eighth. So you can even count. There's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7/8. It also can be found halfway between 1 3/4 and 2. I'm going to do something kind of weird to help you find our next score line because it's sort of a strange measurement. I'm going to have you take this piece that you just scored at 1 7/8 and turn it around 180 degrees. So it's still vertical, but it's facing the other direction. And I want you to find 1 7/8 again. But before you score at that measurement, I want you to scoot the piece of paper to the right just a little tiny bit. I just want you to move it to the right so it's halfway between 4.5 and 4 5/8. I know this is weird. Okay, now I'm going to have you score at 1 7/8 again. What that does is gives us a score line slightly larger than 3/4 of an inch. And the reason we're doing that will be discovered later. Just bear with me right now and place this in pocket A. Now when we score these two orange pieces, I want you to place it first vertically into your score pal, and we'll find 1 5/8. That's halfway between 1.5 and 1 3/4. That's 1 5/8. And 7 1/4. Now we're going to rotate this so it's horizontal, and when you score it, I want you to have the 1 inch area at the top. So when you rotate it, just rotate counterclockwise, and again score it 1 5/8 and 10 3/4. Then you're going to repeat that for the second orange piece. So again, we'll start vertically at 1 5/8 and 7 1/4, and rotate so the 1 inch piece is at the top, 1 inch score area, and score at 1 5/8 and 10 3/4. All right, now both of these pieces can be placed in pocket C along with the other large ones. Again, this is going to make the dust jacket and the box. These next ones are easy. I'm going to score this 8.5 by 11 horizontally at 5.5 and repeat for the remaining 3 pieces. So they'll each get scored at 5.5. And all of these are used in pocket B this time. Next, you should have the red pieces left. These are 7 1/4 by 8 3/4. We're going to score them vertically at 6 1/8 and 6 1/2. Let's repeat that again. 6 1/8 and 6 1/2. Very good. This goes in pocket A. Now we're ready for some assembly. So basically, if you have a copy of these instructions and you followed along and did all of the trimming for all of the pieces of paper that we sorted and gathered and scored and prepared, you'd end up with 4 piles or 4 pockets worth of all of this prepared material. And the reason I have you do this preparation each time is because it's A, something that you can learn to do quite easily, and B, something you can then replicate very easily and as efficiently as possible. So I'm picking up now with page 3 under the planner cover assembly, pocket A. So everything out of this first pocket is what was prepared during that initial process, and this is what's required to make the outside cover of our planner. So this is really cool how it comes together. Let's just talk for a second about the anatomy of a score line. Make sure that the bump of your score is on the inside of your fold, and I'm going to go ahead and crease on those bumps. I'm just using my finger to crease it. You could also use a bone folder to solidify that crease. Now in the craft along kit, you got a needle tipped glue applicator. I also recommended this bookbinding glue to put into the applicator, and that's the material that I use for assembling this project. Mainly I like to use a liquid glue because it gives me a little bit more time to work with it instead of just having the one and done sort of a placement. You see that we formed sort of a spine and then a tab. I'm going to glue this piece to the tab. Now the best way to do that is to just flatten the tab. We want to work flat whenever we can. And I'm going to take the glue applicator and just run a nice line of adhesive along the tab. Then if I can even lay this on my work surface, it's going to be most efficient and most visible. And I'm going to lay this right along the edge of the tab so I can see everything as I'm working. Make sure it's level, and that's why a wet glue gives me that flexibility to just scoot and wiggle. Make sure your top and bottom is level as well, or in this case it's left and right. Okay, so now what we have here is a spine section with what I'm going to call a divider on top of it. Now with this other piece that I have, we have another tab and a little spine. I want to glue this tab and put it on the other side. Okay, so all I need to do is apply some adhesive to the tab. And I'm going to flip the whole thing over so I can see what I'm doing and lay it on top of the green divider, or whatever color you have. Again, trying to align everything beautifully. Check my edges, top, bottom, left, right, however you want to reference the orientation of this piece. And that's all there is to it. Now at this point, if you wanted to, you could take a corner chomper. I do like to use one of these for this. It just kind of gives it a nice professional look. And if you open the chomper on the 1/2 inch setting and insert the corners of the cover into the chomper, you can go ahead and round the 4 outside corners of your little cover. Okay, the next step is to take the spine piece. This is the piece that when we measured it, I wanted the width of the spine to be slightly larger than 3/4 of an inch. And that was simply so that it would wrap itself around the spine that we've created here. And it's hard to tell people to score something at 7/16 or whatever it is. So anyway, now I have a nice spine created with this spine cover. And if you look at this, the two spines combined here, this is going to cover that perfectly. So what we want to do here is we're not going to apply any adhesive to the spine itself. We're only going to apply it to the flaps and add them to the book. And remember how I said it's nice to work flat? So I'm going to flatten the front cover here and apply glue to this flap of my spine cover. Just make sure you get the edges so we have good contact here. Okay, so now I can just slip this right on here, fold it around one side of the cover. And again, it's nice to work when things are flat. So I can just adhere this flap to my front cover. Isn't that great? Flip it over. And once again, I can flatten it out, and I'll do the same thing. So I can apply my glue to this 2-inch flap. As I mentioned, I'm not really going to glue the spine cover to the spine itself, only to the front and back sides. And then just flatten this around. And you can see the book cover forming beautifully. Now you have 2 additional pieces, and if I just take my corner chomper, once again on the 1/2-inch setting, you can use your bookbinding glue, or you can use this handy glue applicator. This is an ATG gun that I don't live without. That stands for Adhesive Transfer Gun, or ATG. And I can center this within that space on the front and then repeat for the back cover. I apologize if I'm following some of the steps a little out of order. Basically, I was letting my heart dictate my steps. Okay, now we're going to add something really clever here, and I'm using a crocodile. And the crocodiles have a smaller and a larger setting. You can just use a regular hole punch for this too. I just use a crocodile because it's what I have handy. And I'm going to punch 2 holes into this triple thickness of paper here. And I'm not going to punch the hole completely into the cover. I'm going to just go a little past the edge with my tool and cut a 1/2 circle from that spot. Boom. And then I'm going to go right next door, just leave some space between the first and the second punch, and do it again. And then I'm going to flip this around and repeat. So once again, adding 2 holes, 2 1/2 holes basically, in corresponding spots. Next, find the elastic that does not have the silver barbs at the end that's in your kit. Fold it in half and then cut it in half. Once the elastic is cut in half, fold it in half again and make a loop to just tie the ends together. So this is just a simple knot. Pull it nice and tight. I'm leaving about a 1-inch tail. You don't want a huge tail. And then repeat for the other piece. Okay, now I can take this piece of elastic and wrap it around the center divider and loop it onto the notch that you made with your punch. So there's notch number 1 and notch number 2. And this is going to be what holds in our dividers and also makes this flexible, in that these dividers can then be removed. I just noticed I could also take my corner chomper and round the outside corners of my divider, and that should be the last step in completing our cover. We can decorate it later. There's plenty of paper in your pocket D to finish off something decorative on the front. Next, take everything out of the second pocket. Again, this was prepared in advance, and I do have a video to help you with all that preparation, so it's not that big of a deal, and that will help you be successful. I'm going to go ahead and take these large pieces of 8.5 by 11 papers and simply fold them in half on the score line, once again being careful to bury the bump of the score line on the inside of the fold. To stick with our theme here, I'm going to go ahead and round the corners, and I can work 2 thicknesses at a time, no problem, even with this heavier paper, if I use the corner chomper. If you're just using a standard punch, you should probably work 1 layer at a time, depending on your hand strength. Next, I'm going to get my score pal out again, not so that I can score these pages, but so I can use them as a jig to make a quick work of folding all of these printed inserts in half. So for example, I'll take 2 sheets of the insert, place it vertically into my score pal base, and then bring the bottom up and then simply rest the bottom edge along the top edge of the score pal. I can work, again, 2 sheets at a time, straighten everything up on the square, bring it up, make sure this is level, and then you don't have to worry about your pages and folds being nice and neat and tidy. The jig of the score pal really helps make that happen quickly. So do that for all of the inserted pages. Once the pages are all folded, you can stack them up neatly, and this is really a great time-saving tip. Then you can burnish one side and burnish the other, and that will create a really nice crisp fold with only 1 pass. Okay, then of course we'll take our corner chomper, and if you wish, you can work in again pairs of 2, which is basically 4 layers of text weight paper. Will round nicely with the corner chomper. So here we have our sets of inserts and our file folders basically. So now I need to take the graph paper, take the 2 sheets that I folded, and then add the other 2 sheets. So now we have 4 pages, or to make 1 signature. 4 individual pieces folded in half will fit inside one of the folders. So go ahead and sort those, just pairing up the like inserts and putting them in the middle of your folders. Then you can probably choose the order that you want to insert these into your book, and we're actually ready to do that. So go back and find the cover that we made earlier. This is so cool. And I want you to take your selected first piece and open it to the center. So again, you've got 4 sheets of paper here, all the same style. This is going to be my calendar, and you can choose the color or the order. And then I'm going to slide it under the very first piece of elastic that is on the first punched hole in this, what is now going to be considered the front of my book. Then I'll take the next section, I'll open it, slide it under the second piece, and that'll fit right in there. The third section, maybe I'm going to go with this print so I have some contrast from the green divider. And yes, I know there's a knot in there. It's kind of unfortunate, but it just kind of makes for easy assembly. And I have 1 more strap I can slide this into, and that's what makes this flexible. So I can pull these out, I can store an archive of the materials that I've collected, my to-do lists or my graph paper, and permanently store it as an archive in the bottom of this box when the planner is in use, which is kind of a cool thing. Okay, now we have these little manila envelopes, and you can just decide where you want them to go. Basically what I did was I found the second divider and slid this piece in so that it went both in front and in back of it. So it kind of separates it a little bit. Then I went to the second half of my booklet and did the same thing. You can choose if you want what you want on whatever side. Maybe I'll go this way. I'm just going to slide it in there so that it peeks on the other side of my divider, like this. So now these pockets are forming at unique places. I can make one lower. I can push one to be higher. That's kind of cool. Next, I have 2 larger light green pieces and 4 smaller red ones. Now the light green and the red fit nicely together. And what we can do is round those right corners on one long edge. I'm calling it right, but there's really no orientation yet here. And I can do that on the second set as well. What you can do is nest these together, and they are designed to fit into the pocket that we created by trimming the bottom off of the envelope, which creates a pocket. It's really cool. But I'm not going to glue them yet because I have a little tip I want to show you on how to make a tab for these little inserts. From Pocket D, I did find this little piece of dark green paper. It measures 3 1/4 by 4 1/2. I'm going to cut this into two squares measuring 2 1/4 inches each. And then I'm going to see which way the grain direction goes in this paper, and this wants to be folded in half this way. So I'll score it at 1 1/8. And then I'll fold the paper in half by burying the bump of the score line. Then with my corner chomper on the 1/4 inch setting, I'm going to punch into the folded edge. Next, I can open up my little butterfly here. It's going to become a little tab, and add some bookbinding glue to the entire surface on the inside. After that, I can clip it around the larger piece of paper that we have here so that I have a nice little tab sticking out. You don't want it going out too far. I got it about at least a 1/2 inch maybe. And then I can add either my glue or my ATG, totally up to you. It should nest right on there, and it will cover the bottom portion of the tab. If you were going to be using the liquid adhesive, just simply go around the perimeter and then squiggle your way through there. And you can repeat this for the second piece. And then that fits right inside the pocket beautifully. And then you have a nice tab to pull out. That concludes everything from pocket B. So now we're going to move on and make the box and slip cover. Take everything out of pocket C. Let's start by identifying the score line along a horizontal edge that is only 1 inch from the top. So in that case, I can confirm that this narrower scored area is only 1 inch. I'm going to bury the bump of the score line inside my fold and repeat that for all 4 pieces. If you want, you can burnish the score with a bone folder, and then I want you to take some bookbinding glue and squiggle it all along the flap that you made on the inside of the flap, and fold the flap over onto itself. This green paper has a texture to it, so I'm hoping that it was scored and folded correctly so that the texture is still going to be on the outside of this fold. And repeat for not only all of the dark green pieces, but the 2 orange pieces as well. I'm going to start with these green pieces. These are slightly smaller than the slip cover, so this is the box piece. And with scissors, I actually find it a little easier to look at this when the bump of the score is facing up. And I'm going to go ahead and remove a small dart, which basically I'm just removing the line of the score from the bottom edge up into the intersecting horizontal line. So that's just taking out the score. I'm going to do the same on the other side. But this time, instead of just taking the slit, I'm going to remove the entire corner. So just rotate and remove it. So now I have a missing corner. On this side, you need to have a tab, okay? I'm going to repeat this for the second piece. So again, removing just the score line itself up to the point where I reach the intersecting horizontal score, and then take out the entire corner on the left side here. I'm removing that score line as well, keeping it nice and straight though. Okay, so now I'm going to prepare my box shape by folding on all of the score lines, once again burying the bump of the score inside the fold. Next, make sure both pieces are horizontal in front of you with the 1 inch tab at top, and I've got my missing corner over here. So I'm going to fold over this side wall, and I'm going to add some glue to the entire flap, just the sidewall only. And I'm going to take the other piece and turn it over so that the 1 inch flap is on the inside facing the other one. And I'm going to place this sidewall on top of the other. So this is what's going to start to form that box shape. I hope that made sense. You want the outsides facing out, right? And that one little flap kind of indicates the inside of the box. And just press that down and burnish it firmly. You want that to bond. And it's an uneven surface inside, so it may need a little extra TLC. Now flip the project completely over and open the box. Then take this piece and fold it over again. And repeat. So I'm going to apply the glue to the flap of the sidewall. Take the right edge and simply bring it back down, laying it flat. Remember how I mentioned it's nice to work flat? The same is the case here. Now I can see really well. Make sure it's a nice flattened piece and form into a rectangle. And now I have what will be the base box of my unit. I have to still deal with these tabs here yet, so let me show you how to do that. I'm going to start out by putting one of the long walls inside, And then I'm going to apply glue to the back of these other 3 walls, the 2 tabs and then this long wall here. So I'll just apply the glue. Notice I'm working with this kind of facing up. Stabilize from beneath if you need to. Going around the perimeter and then filling in with my squiggles. Okay, so with this flap down, this long wall, I'm going to bring in my sides, make sure they're not extending past this edge here, and then bring in the long flap, and just tuck everything in nicely. You'll do it from this side, and then you go in and do it from the other side. Flip it over. You can reach right down in there and just burnish. And you got yourself a really nice looking box. With the orange piece, make sure you have the 1-inch folded area at the top and look down at the bottom. On my left, I happen to have the smallest square here. It's a rectangle. And then this scored area actually makes a square. So on the square side, I'm just going to go up and remove the score line only, just keeping everything else. Don't even really make much of a V. Just remove the score line itself. However, on the other side, you're going to remove the entire score line and the whole corner. So just cut on the other side of the line to remove the smaller rectangle. The other side was a square shape, and then this is that rectangle. So we're going to do the same thing here. So on the larger square, just take out the score line only, stopping at the intersecting score. And then on this side, take out the rectangle. So to make the lid now, I'm going to begin by first preparing all of my scores again, fold inward so that the bumps of the scores are in the inside of the fold, and then the flap too should be like on the inside as well. Okay, once again, I'm going to place my piece that has the smallest side wall, so that's this one, and with the missing corner. So if yours is on the other side, you need to work from the other side. So just make sure whichever piece doesn't have the rectangle, that's what you have to apply the glue to. So this is just like the other cover, except now we're only applying glue to the small side wall. Again, flip the whole process around. If you're missing corners over here, you've got to place the glue there. And now this piece that has the tab, the wide flap, gets lined up with the edge of this cover piece here, making sure that the folded over edge is aligned at the top right here. Burnish that a little bit. Then I'm going to flip the entire project over and open it. Fold over the side wall. Just work very carefully with this step. This is probably the #1 hang up in every class where people struggle. If that happens, you're just going to have to find some substitute paper from your stash. Probably wouldn't be that hard, and a lot of this paper gets covered up anyway. So don't fret it. If it goes south on you, don't worry. Just substitute with another sheet of 12 by 12 paper and trim it and score it as indicated in step 4. That's all there is to it. It happens, so don't feel bad, okay? Now I'm making my rectangle like I did before. I'll tuck in one long flap, and then the other ones I'm going to fold out so that I can apply glue easily. So just come on in and get those tabs and get one long wall, this one. Okay, order of assembly, tuck in the tabs so they can be hidden by the long wall. Just square it up nicely. Make sure those tabs are tucked all the way in. Another advantage of a wet adhesive, gives you a little bit of time to adjust. And then just smooth things up from the other side. Okay, now here's where the rubber meets the road. Does the lid fit onto the base? And it does. Okay, so now your whole unit should just go right inside here just fine, and then the lid comes on and it's looking quite beautiful. Now, what about these other pieces that we came out of this particular pocket? Well, at this point you can decide how you want your piece. Like, do you want it to live on its side or its top? Is there any particular way you'd like this positioned? I'm going to go this route. So again, you can either use your dry adhesive if you don't mind a one and done sort of a placement opportunity. And I'm going to just put a thorough coat on. And if you really want good adhesion, I'd recommend going with the liquid glue. It'll give you a little bit more time to fine-tune your placement. Now there's almost no reveal on this, which is again why if this cover doesn't, the assembly doesn't go your way, it's not a big deal. So I'm going to flip this over, and this time I'll just use my bookbinding glue. Okay, we have this beautiful strip that we can add to the outside long edge. And you have two more pieces for those outside short walls. Oh, I'm very pleased with how this looks. And again, I can add my lid, and it looks very, very nice from all sides. Now, you do have the 8-inch elastic with barbs, and you don't want to add that until we decorate our cover. So I'm going to reach into pocket D and grab some of the prints. Now, before I add the elastic closure, I want to just decorate the front cover. Now I've got two strips that are the same that I can use to decorate this and like layer onto it. And the width is already pretty good. Like this is 3.5 and this is 3 3/4. So I just need to measure this is 8 1/4. So I'm going to just trim just these prints at 8 inches. Next, I'll take my corner chomper and pay attention to the direction you want these to go. And this can sit beautifully right here, so I'll go ahead and attach. And I'll do the same on the back cover. In order to add the elastic with the barbs at the back cover, I'm going to flip it over. Just make sure you know the front cover and the back cover. This is the back. I'm going to measure 1 inch from the left edge and a 1/2 inch up from the bottom, approximately. So a 1/2 inch from the bottom and 1 inch from the left edge. With my grid ruler, I can make easy work of that. So I've got the ruler position 1/2 inch, and there's my 1. I'm going to make a little mark there. I'm going to turn this around and do the same thing. Again, a 1/2 inch from the bottom edge and 1 inch from the right edge, or the long edge. Now I can take my hole punch, and this time I'm only going to use the smaller sized hole. I can't remember what it is, 1/4 inch maybe. And just make sure you have only the back cover, and eye up that little mark you made, and just give that a little punch. And again, this is why I waited until the cover was decorated. If you choose not to, just keep transferring the hole to the various layers that you're adding. Now, when you attach the elastic, I want you to bring the barb in through the punched hole all the way, and just kind of turn it on its side so it stays in. Do the same for the other side. Now with this attached, I can bring it around to the front cover and it fits perfectly. After that, everything else in pocket D, as well as all of the photo mats that came in your kit, the ribbons, the cut-aparts, all the charms and embellishments, all of that can be used to decorate your book. It's just going to be so much fun to embellish it. Let's take a quick look again at my finished sample. I got out my die cutting machine and I cut some cut-aparts for the front, nested them onto a piece of a scrap. Did the same thing here. You can see how everything just adapted so beautifully. I'll just page through it so you can see some of the finishing ideas. I always just kind of follow my heart here. I even adapted some photo mats to fit. Added a matted item here. Some paper remnants, some scraps from before, the die cuts. You can even decorate the little inserts as well, and decorate each side of those manila folders. Here's a manila envelope here, decorated on both sides. A nested cut-apart, border strips to anchor everything down. Even that 1/4 inch strip I used to line the inside of that divider. Here's my to-do page and the back. Simply beautiful. I had the different cover here. I used this one here, switch things around. Again, it's your own darn book. You can make it however you wish. Now, as I mentioned, you can create the same exact project with other kits and collections from Club Scrap. And I just got started on this one with our new October collection called In Transit. So this one is designed more as a journaling style, as a travel journal. So I think this is going to be awesome. Like if you go on a European river cruise, you could make your notes and sketches, even your to-dos for your trip or your itinerary, and you can even add memorabilia to the envelopes and everything included. This hasn't even been decorated yet, but I just love the way that turned out with that beautiful train print here. My colleague Karen also made one with the Prism collection. So let's say you've got a Disney trip planned. You can take advantage of all these fun bright colors. You were born to sparkle. Isn't that perfect? So again, her journal all fully decorated, ready for some adventures. And then finally, I also made one. This might be perfect for your teen or tween, preteen. It's just a fun colored book. This is made with a collection called Little Sprouts, and have big dreams. You will grow into them. Here, when you disassemble this, you've got all kinds of fun options. And another beautiful book inside. I realized that was a pretty substantial project. I hope you had fun watching it all come together and that you're inspired to make one of your own. If you liked this approach, the organized and planned out and carefully mapped out approach to making a complex project much easier by taking it step by step, I invite you to join us at Club Scrap with some sort of a membership. We have a card club and a page club, and we approach the assembly of our layouts and cards the exact same way. So if you typically find yourself spending an hour or more on a single layout, you don't have to do that if you do it the Club Scrap way. I invite you to give it a try, and I hope to see you in class again soon. Thanks for joining me.